I would like to welcome everybody who took the time to join today's virtual roundtable, which deals with a topic that has been for quite a while on the top of the agenda of many of our members of the ECLF community. It deals with artificial intelligence and the role artificial intelligence plays in the context of corporate learning. And I'm actually super excited that we have three outstanding panelists today to join that roundtable. It's actually Thomas Davenport from Babson University, who is a recognized and globally well-known scholar who has been working in the area of machine learning, artificial intelligence, data, computer science since many, many, many years. He's currently at Babson, but he's also a fellow at MIT, and you will get to know him in a minute in more detail. I also would like to welcome Kai Liebert, who is the global head of learning and the head of the learning campus of Siemens, the global corporation, and is quite advanced in deploying artificial intelligence in learning contexts on a very, very large scale. And likely Tiro, who is vice president of Infosys and head of Infosys's corporate university, one of the most outstanding corporate universities on this planet, and also an extremely advanced practitioner in that field. So without further ado, I'd like to get into the conversation. Just a couple of words before we start to who is hosting this. It's ECLF, the Executive Corporate Learning Forum, which is a consortium of about 50 or so global corporations who come together and exchange in dialogue and in projects on the future of learning, development, leadership, innovation, and stuff like that. And it's co-produced with the Center for the Future of Organization, which I happen also to lead, where we look into the future, how organizations will deal with all the disruptions that are coming to us, specifically in the digital world. Okay, so let's get going. I recorded this actually separately. We jump right into the conversation with Tom Davenport and get a little bit of his background and what he thinks about that topic.
I have worked on various technologies over the years, from enterprise resource planning to knowledge management. I think when I last darkened the door of Siemens, it was knowledge management. Then I decided that really it was knowledge derived from data that was going to have a big impact. So I started working on analytics, then big data, then artificial intelligence, all of which raise very similar kinds of issues in organizations, even though they're called different things. And I don't know, it's hard to characterize the impact of AI on organizations because it's still, I think, early. If you include traditional machine learning in AI, I think it becomes an extension of what companies were doing with analytics and big data. And that is, moving toward greater prediction, granularity, understanding what customers might do, understanding what employees might do. And I was on a webcast yesterday about HR and how HR is changing with technology. And I argued that, you're starting to see a lot of human resource organizations predict who's likely to be an effective performer, who's likely to leave the organization. And I think we will eventually be able to, I don't know whether we'll do it or not, we'll be able to start treating the workforce as individual employees and kind of personalizing a lot of our, our recommendations, our offers, if you will, to employees. But I wouldn't say much of that is happening yet. We're still treating the workforce as a kind of a, a undifferentiated body for the most part, and offering them, similar kinds of learning and development, except for, of course, the senior executives always get, better and more tailored and more personal kinds of learning opportunities. But, I think we're at the point where we have so much learning-oriented content, and we have so much variation on the part of the consumers of that content that we really do need some AI to match, to make that match. So I think it's going to be a very fruitful area going forward. So with that, I'll stop and shut up and listen to people who really do this for a living.
Well, thanks, Tom. You know, I think, why do we have even this subject, artificial intelligence, in the context of learning? At the ECLF community, we always throw out what interests you, and this is just a topic which has been on the radar, right, Kai, since quite some time now,
Yes.
2 or 3 years, always been very interesting. And I see really, you know, 3 dimensions in this. On one hand, of course, we have now AI, although it has been around since decades, in the last few years, really accelerating its importance, you know, because probably of the availability of data, which haven't been in that way available in the past, of course. So there is everybody now talking about the future of work and what is it doing and so on and so forth. So there's one big topic of AI, how it impacts people and organizations. Another one is in the specific case of learning, that obviously there is an incredible skill challenge coming, upskilling, reskilling, and how do we do this with tools that are beyond maybe the traditional classroom paradigm? You know, we need to go into ways, and maybe there AI plays a role as an instrument that reshapes the delivery of learning. And then third, AI also changes possibly the way the learning and development function itself works. So it needs to reshape its own identity, its own capabilities. And these are 3 elements. On one hand, the one which is on, you know, the basic things, generic ones, the other one about the organization, and third, really the learning thing itself. Thiru, you are with Infosys, and you are one of the, let me see, I just have to move. Just a second. You are at Infosys in one of the leading technology companies, and famous for having a corporate university that impacts not only your own employees, but also the IT, you know, community at large in India and beyond. How do you see that subject?
No, absolutely. Thanks, Roland, for this conversation. If you look at Infosys, we are a global system integrator. Obviously, most of the business that we do or the growth that we do is driven around the talent. And it is natural that we need to invest in learning and development function, which is basically making sure that our employees are continuously made relevant for future. And while we have been doing that, the pace of change, as we all know, is so dramatic and drastic. We need to continuously look at how do we skill our employees, just like you articulated about the reskilling and upskilling initiatives that are happening. And the only way for us to scale this effectively was to look at how do we use the digital platform powered by AI and ML. And that is what we have been trying to do. Because without the power of AI, without the power of NLP and ML, you will not be able to really make meaningful personalized recommendations, as Tom was also talking about. So what we have been doing, to be frank, is how do we make sure that we bring in the personal experiences that the employees are having in their own space, where they are talking to many of these AI assistants, AI algorithms in their own personal space, whether it is in Amazon buying experience or other things around Facebook and other things, right? So we try to bring that into our learning. So whenever employees basically get onto our digital platform to learn, they get career advice around what are the different career opportunities that are there based on their current role that they are playing. So we are using AI algorithms to kind of meaningfully provide learning paths, intelligently saying that today this is the skill that you possess, and these are the alternate or incremental skills. So where we are using AI in recommending a meaningful incremental next steps for learning. At the same time, we also, you talked about the corporate university that we have in Mysore, where we train 14,000 students in a classroom mode for 3 to 4 months. There, if you look at it, we are trying to see how we can move away from a model of sage on a stage to a guide on a side, where our educators basically are using the power of AI with the data insights that we get. So even in a classroom where we are teaching 80 people in a particular subject, we know for each and every student or each and every employee what they are learning, how they are learning, and then engage them in set of interactive Q&A, and we know who is understanding the topic well, and basically then provide a meaningful recommendation back to them, right? That's the second one. And third one, what we have done in bringing the power of AI is to create our own virtual learning assistant. We call it Zoe internally. So where employee can actually interact using the power of interactive AI, we are making sure that our employees get the Zoe to play a role of a quiz master, guidance around what they should be learning and how they should be improving based on their peers' learning and everything. So we are trying to bring in conversational interactive AI in the personal learning space using the platform. In the classroom model also, we are trying to bring in power of AI with the data insights to make sure that every employee in a truly an equal to one personalization model is addressed. And at the same time, we are also trying to create alternate reskilling paths recommended based on what employee knows today and what they are performing today.
I don't know, Thiru, I'd like to stick with that sage on the stage model. That's worked very well for me over the years, so I hate to see it go. So.
No, sage on the stage will still be there, but you can play both the role of sage on the stage at the same time be the guide on the side as well.
There you go.
So.
Okay, I feel better now.
What is a sage on the stage? I didn't not familiar. Tom, what is that?
Smart guy standing up in front of the room telling them what they need to know, you know.
Oh, I see.
Typical model.
Yeah. I think that's really fascinating. And obviously, you know, you have a large ship here and the large game to play with. Maybe a few words also about Infosys and why, you know, is Infosys such a leader in this? I mean, you've been, you know, also with your university in India and your role in the society. Why is that Infosys reached that kind of branding and positioning? Because others could have done that too. Why is it not Tata or Microsoft or you know?
No, I'm pretty sure others may be doing parts of it as well. But I've been in this company, Infosys, for almost 23, 24 years now. The best part I feel is the vision of our founding fathers or founding members, where they believe that the industry that we are in is constantly around how do you reskill or how do you learn, unlearn, and relearn, right? And that is where they have set up this entire foundation initially in terms of having a corporate university, where we basically make sure that initially it started as a finishing school model where college graduates are basically brought in, and then there is a 3 month of intense learning where we make them ready for corporate world. But then after that, since the world has been continuously changing from normal mainframe to a .NET era to a digital era and now completely AI and data-driven era, we need to make sure that our employees who have always built their career in one particular technology or one particular skill have to constantly transform themselves into the other things. And that is where we started bringing in this power of digital platform. And while we do the digital platform, as Tom was saying, we also realized that we need to do it across. So what we have been doing, in fact, I don't know if you have been seeing the news, in September of 2020, we are replicating the model that we have done in India, where we are setting up an Indiana corporate university for Infosys, which is about 120 plus acres. And we can actually train 500 students or 500 employees. They can live in the campus, learn, they will be encouraged to kind of try different things. So learning learning has always been the foundation of what Infosys wanted to do and we is doing. In fact, one important quote, if I can quote Nandan, who is our chairman, he basically says that the only thing that should stop employee from learning is their own motivation. Rest all things company has to take care.
Yeah.
Murthy and Nandan Nilekani were both big supporters of learning from the beginning, weren't they?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Both Nandan and NRN, our chief founder, both of them were always big believers of this. And I know, Tom, you have been a great proponent of knowledge management, and I know my team has had many interactions with you. So we are trying to bring knowledge management also as something like an organizational learning. We are trying to just not use the word knowledge management where people think it's something where you are kind of pushed to kind of share best practices, but it is becoming more like personal learning as well as organizational learning. So thanks for all the things that you have done in that space.
It's been a while, but thank you.
but still. Kai, yeah. I mean, you are at Siemens applying these things since now quite a while, and as far as I know, it is within our community one of the most advanced, kind of experimentation and stuff that is going on in a global company. How do you see that whole thing, and what's your experience with artificial intelligence? And maybe a few words about yourself as well before you start.
Yes. Thanks, Roland. Yeah, my name is Kai Liebert. I'm the head of the Global Learning Campus at Siemens. And Global Learning Campus is the corporate university of Siemens and serving 1 million participants every year. Of course, lots of them also in classroom, but also e-learning. And our connection to Tiro is that we recently acquired our learning experience platform from Infosys, and we currently in a co-creation build this thing up. And but the whole story, Roland, this started a little bit earlier because we started, I think it was 4 years ago, something like that. We ask ourselves, what is the role of the corporate university in 5 to 10 years? So why should Siemens pay me and my colleagues? What's the reason? Because we saw already there that a lot of content libraries are available for free or for very low cost. And we also saw from Siemens, we are a very heterogeneous company, which very, very specialized skill sets all over the world. So we are not a homogeneous company, but okay, everybody needs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have specialists in the energy area, in the mobility arena, in the PLC arena, and. And so we said, okay, well, how it will happen? Then what we created is just more or less a vision. And we didn't really talk about technology. We just talked about the role of a corporate learning university within the Siemens future. And then it rather quickly showed up that we have how we did this in the past definitely won't go in the future. So we have to change our approach, and we have to more individualize things. And by technology, and we had a picture where we could use AI, and we made several experiments. So we make experiments with classification, automatic content classification. We have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of content objects. Okay, how can we classify this automatically? Yeah? We talked about language processing. How can we deal with language coaches, for instance? How can we deal with assistants? Yeah? We made sentiment analysis, and how can we analyze our feedbacks, not just to go wrong or yes or no, so what is the feeling behind these, and to get more information out. And of course, we thought about recommendation systems. And then we made some experiments, and 2 to 3 years ago, it was quite obvious that we got a lot of promises from vendors, but nearly no one of these guys really could fulfill their promises in our Siemens environment. And just brackets here, if you want to integrate a system in Siemens, you are very aware of this one, it's very complicated. We are active in 9 countries. We are really fully compliant to all local data privacy statements. Yeah? We have strong workers' council in Germany, in Austria, in France, and so on. It's very differentiated. Yeah? Right. And so it's easy to just start an app and say, hey, look, we have fancy stuff. But to really make it fully work in a corporate environment with more than 300,000 people, that is really a completely different task. So,
wait, so because you said they made a lot of promises they couldn't keep.
Yeah.
What kind of promises were there? And what couldn't they
fully automated content creation, web-based trainings.
They couldn't keep.
Fully automated content curation. Yeah? And we made these tech tests. And if you then type in leadership, and you get a leadership result, and it was just any web page. There was no judgment. There was no thing, why is it relevant for Siemens or for me? It was just any content. Yeah? And if we made this classification system, we tried to do it with a very large company. And we found out it just didn't work. Yeah? And the same with recommendation systems. It was not available. It failed. But we didn't give up. How could the world look like imperfectly? And then we try to manually recreate this. because we thought it will happen anyhow. So just imagine it is there, and how would the organization look like? It means then we educated curators. Yeah? We thought about our ecosystems. We thought about what would we do if. Yeah? We started with our old learning world version, yeah, where we have manual curation, and we simulated artificial intelligence. Yeah? Give your interest, give 1, 2, 3, and then we really learned how such a new corporate university could work. And then, as the timing was perfect, then of course we made a huge RFP, and when we had Infosys as a supplier, which we could rather precisely, hope Thierry's, tell the people or tell Thiru, this is what we want. Yeah, and are you able to do so? And then, in the most of the topics, we were very happy. Yeah, and regarding recommendation, maybe you come later to this one. Recommendation. When I have a look, I had quite a good overview about all different systems which are available on the market. Recommendation is currently, at least from my perspective, mainly driven by job profiles and the skill levels reported to job profiles. And that is for me not really AI. It's more a mechanical system. Yeah, you are a senior sales guy, but then you got senior sales courses. I also got a demonstration of an AI system which was promised us to give us the most critical skills for the future based on job matching, based on existing skills and whatever. What came out, it was digitalization, yeah, it was agile, yeah, it was IoT, and hey, I don't need an AI system to find out that agile, digitalization are the most interesting skills, you know, and there was the evidence of the results was rather low. So that is what's experienced, but now we have made a new step, yeah, and now step by step we will see how much AI is really reliable, available, and can support us now doing our job.
You know, can I say something, Roland?
Sure.
This whole area of reskilling, I think, is encountering some of the problems that Kai describes, because if you talk about reskilling for a large organization, unless you really personalize it down to the job, which is quite complex because we don't really know what jobs are going to be looking like in the future, what you come up with is these very generic, oh, people need to be tech savvy and agile and so on, which are, I think, as you suggested, Kai, not very interesting. So I think that means that, and I know of a couple of companies, I think JP Morgan Chase is doing that now. They're working with a center I work with at MIT. They're classifying all of their jobs individually and saying what skills are going to be needed in the future in those jobs, and that it's a lot of work. They're using MIT to help them do it, but that might lead to some interesting reskilling opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So what we basically do at Infosys, if I have to summarize then the challenging statement, right? Instead of trying to get recommendations which are very basic and not relevant, we have, let us say, a talent management system where we kind of consolidate all the requirements that we see in the market for Infosys. And we basically know what skills are needed. And in that skill set, since we also have created the similar thing that Kai talked about, the taxonomy as well as the prerequisites and the nearest adjacency and everything, what we try to do basically is combine the power of data where 3 or 4 elements come into place. One is you have a set of requirements or set of in-demand job requirements in the market that we are actually being asked to service, and what are the skills for that. There's also another activity of 240,000 employees of Infosys where, based on the current skills, there is an interest expressed by them, and they are going and searching for a lot of things based on what they hear in the market as well as their own self. And then using the power of taxonomy as well as these things and the learning progress and the learning history, we synthesized all of this and then say, if you are doing this job today with this skill in this role, this is possibly an opportunity for you because others are doing similar things based on your role. And thereby we are able to see at least much more meaningful recommendations coming out than just going purely by only one aggregate data that we get. But combine all these different things.
Well, I think what you're saying is it's hard enough to do that for present jobs effectively, right? And I think even much harder to think about what kinds of skills might be needed in the future, and how does that relate to reskilling needs?
You guys
so
know
in fact, what we did was we actually looked into about 2,900 skills, and we segmented them into 3 categories, what we call them as Horizon 1, 2, and 3. And we started to look at what exactly the market potential is for them. And we tried to create it in each and every area, like in data, in cloud, in experiences, in APIs. We tried to kind of segment all the different skills into what are the skills of past, skills of today, and skills of tomorrow. And as Kai rightly said, initially there was a little bit of a manual effort linked to say how they are kind of interconnected. But then once people start using, employees start using it, the power of data then actually allows you to leverage the power of AI to kind of then meaningfully kind of drive some recommendations. Initially, the effectiveness might be only 40%, 30%, but then as employees start using it and then they see the relevance of it in terms of the growth that we see in the market, then the percentage effectiveness actually significantly improves.
Mm-hmm. John, one step back, because we talked also about data. But you said we need a lot of data in the system, and what we also did in preparation, that we made our mind what data could we use and how could we generate data. Because in a very early experiment, we found out, if we talked about AI, machine learning, and whatever, the people laughed at us, because if we thought we have a lot of information available, 150,000 feedbacks sheets, we were very proud of this one, okay, do something, and they just laughed at us. 150,000 is nothing. Then it was our idea, so how can we create more reliable data that in a later stage can be used by an AI, that we now step by step can fill in also into the system. And I think all these things take time. You can't do it just you have technology and you start, everything works. Now we're currently still in feeding the system with data. And maybe one interesting side regarding skill management. There's one topic is the idea of having a top-down skill management. We do it as well for the hot skills. It's a very 2 handfuls of very, very, very important skills, which are really, but it's your Horizon 3 skills, Thiru, which are we need to be future fit. On the other, we thought about how could it be that we have a bottom-up skill management as well, that we take a skill like an object, like a learning object. And why shouldn't we just have a description of a skill, and say, and you can just put it in a system, and you can rate it like a learning object. If I like it, it's relevant, it's not relevant. And then don't follow the typical HR approach and having a job family, a job role, and so on. Just building it up, bottom up, and say, hey, you have different skills, and the combination of all the skills, that more is the job role, but it might change every day. And that's the people themselves describe the skills. And so, okay, if you have a skill object, I have a corresponding learning object. And then it could be much faster, because when we thought about in our heterogeneous world, how to set up a skill learning match, it's really impossible. So we have to trust also in the wisdom of the crowd in the learning objects creation, but also in the skill object creation. That's just an idea how we try to accelerate the time to competence and use our intelligence of the company, not just of the headquarters.
I think that's very smart, because I can remember when I worked at Accenture and Ernst & Young, and we had these large hierarchical top-down skill definitions. And I always found when I tried to fill that out, nothing that I was an expert in was in that list, because it changed so slowly and it was all yesterday's oriented skills. So it's great to hear that you're starting to do it from the bottom up.
I mean, Tom, that reminds me very much of you got this history in knowledge management. I think we met way back when you were in knowledge management, right? And these knowledge management architectures remind me to the same issue, that you would have a centralized database where you try to collect everything and then distribute this knowledge centrally down, and that didn't work at all, as we know. The question here, I think, is the same. I mean, the question is really also what is learning, and if we kind of agree that learning depends very much on interaction and on, somehow meeting different perspectives and negotiating these perspectives and so on and so forth. There's probably more to that, of course, than just content learning, right? It's an element where you also shape culture because of learning. So my question may be also in regards to artificial intelligence, what kind of a cultural impact do you see? Because if you go back and talk to people, what do they take away if they go to a, let's say, Harvard executive program or just a regular training exercise? Half of the value people feel is networking with people, understanding what's going on at the company, getting to know others, so have a shortcut in case I need to know something. So this whole informal type of cultural underbelly of an organization is also something where the learning architecture really drives it and can shape it. Now, speaking of AI, and maybe we can also throw in unstructured data-based AI, which is not based on stuff where you would, let's say, tag and understand and have it in a kind of a digital yes or no way, but intelligence that can somehow almost intuitively understand what's going on culturally in an organization. Is there anything in your research, in your practice, that looks at unstructured data and cultural impact of AI?
Well, I mean, there are rudimentary forms of it. I think Thiru may have mentioned sentiment analysis, and you know, you can do sentiment analysis of content on the internet, for example, and determine, you know, is it mostly positive or mostly negative? You know, my favorite example of that is I was working with Marriott, and they were trying to classify sentiment on TripAdvisor, and someone wrote the pool was too cool, and they could never figure out, was that a positive or a negative comment?
That's a great one.
Yeah. So I think it's very rudimentary, and you hear people talking about emotional AI. Frankly, yeah. I think it's way too rudimentary to even really use in organizations. I just did a survey with Deloitte last year, and we asked, I advised against this because I pretty much knew that not many people were using it, but we asked, are you using emotional AI? Something like 60% said, oh yeah, we're using emotional AI. But the companies who make that available, it's very early days. Most of them are spin-outs of the MIT Media Lab. At most, you know, even human therapists have a hard time deciding, are you depressed, are you happy, or whatever, and machines can't do it very well. You know, in order to do all of that, we have to have good data on outcomes. It has to be labeled data. This person is really happy. Here's what you look like when you're really happy. We don't really have that yet. So I think it's very early days for all of that sort of thing. So I think the implication is, I think your point is a really good one, Roland. If we're going to communicate the content side of learning and development through digital means, you know, some of the adaptive learning that Thiru was describing, that's great, but then we have to sort of figure out how do we communicate the cultural side and develop the soft skills and so on. And I think that is often experiential, and it kind of came along with the other stuff as you're describing. You go to business school or you go to an executive program and you make these relationships. How do you do that if most of the knowledge accumulation is through a screen and headphones or whatever? So I think it really changes the nature of learning and development to focus specifically on that sort of soft skill and cultural learning.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really a question how you define learning, right? And there is the cognitive element and maybe the skill-based element, which is relatively easy, right? Because we have textbooks, we have experts, we have all that kind of stuff where we can say, well, I don't know, now I know. When it comes to social learning, it's not about knowing, right? It's about the ability maybe to negotiate in a better way or to shape a cultural situation in ways that are productive for the larger community, for instance, or whatever. And then it becomes, you know, there are other elements of learning when it goes to political sophistication, right? Which actually at higher echelons in the organization becomes a decisive thing. I need to learn to be a diplomat, right? And to learn to navigate these difficult waters of internal micropolitics. That's a learning goal as well. And eventually think about ethical learning. You know, how do you learn to be really a kind of a responsible organization and stuff like that? And we link also individual learning with this kind of organizational capability building. And
well, our thoughts are here. Yeah, our thoughts are here the following, because social learning and so on.
Yeah.
Currently, in a normal classroom training, it's not just knowledge transfer. It's a lot what's happening there. It's loyalty, it's proud, it's network, it's interaction, it's a lot of stuff.
Yes.
So what won't work is just to say, if you take the classroom experience and put it into a platform. Currently, it's not a way. Maybe in the future with augmented reality and stuff, but currently not. So what we try to do is then, okay, we just take the knowledge pieces out of it and then focus, if people come together, on these topics we now cannot do with the platform. It's loyalty, it's networking, it's doing. And then you have different formats, like hackathons, like labs, like stuff like this one, bringing people together, work on this. Then they can interact with social learning. Then they can learn about the micropolitics. Then can learn about how to manage very complex social interactions. Yeah, but we try to a little bit separate this from the really pure knowledge transfer. And the knowledge transfer can be perfectly done with the learning experience platform. Yeah, and it can be self-guided. Yeah, if you put people in the more loyalty aspects, okay, it's a different thing, but you can do it as well. But you don't have to combine it in a traditional classroom situation. But then you can really focus on this one. We made very good experience with that, with text lens and stuff like this one. Yeah,
which is really important, because one could argue that the content, the knowledge that can be easily transferred in a digital environment, much of that knowledge is going to be embedded in machines anyway, and what's going to be left for the humans are the kinds of skills, the cultural and social and political skills that we've just been describing. Those may be the only learning and development skills that we need to transmit, that we need to develop in humans, because everything else will be done by machines eventually.
No, that's actually a really good point. You know, we reached out to people who have signed up for this webinar and asked what kind of, you know, questions maybe would you have, you know, that are close to your heart to that topic. Why did you even sign up and things? We didn't get a lot of responses, but what came out a lot was what is really the future then of learning and the human-machine interaction that is based on these new ways how machines can help and do certain kind of things. We just came from a ECLF meeting in Italy in January, where we
just in time, you got out before the coronavirus came in.
Oh, just in time, I tell you. That was in Turin at Fiat, and I actually was at Coma, which is a subsidiary of Fiat that does robotics and industrial and manufacturing automation, but it was very much about human-machine interaction. And I think it's, what I'd like to really move the discussion towards is also, on one hand, you have the impact of AI in the context of learning clearly when it comes to taggable content and maybe personalizing content and curating content and stuff that what we're talking about right now. But then this impact is also, how do we reconfigure the learning architecture? Because we currently have a lot of the skill-based stuff still, you know, in maybe online, you know, in digital form, and there the classroom is slowly going away. But all the social elements and all the other elements and of that is not currently possible to put into kind of a technology, or is there? Somebody mentioned AI, not AI, augmented reality, virtual reality, these kind of things where you start to bring people into rooms, even if they're not physically into rooms, like we have here right now, right? It's not the same as we would sit really on a coffee table, but it's better than we would do just, you know, a series of lectures, I think. So Kai, I mean, in terms of, I mean, you are not so much in leadership culture, because at Siemens you separate leadership excellence from the learning campus, but how do you see the linkage and also the leadership role in this whole process?
Leadership role in the culture, you mean?
And in the context of AI.
Yeah. You know, I think we currently are thinking about what can we do to enable our leaders to deal better with AI, but not with learning in AI. Now we're really dealing about AI as a profession, as AI in requiring to our products and customers. It's a different animal. Yeah, and then we have, of course, much more complex leadership tasks, and AI is just an element of it. So when we talk about leading in ecosystems, you're aware of this one. It's one of your topics as well. Yeah. Yes. So how do I lead in this VUCA and ecosystem management? That is one topic. On the other hand, now we're going away from AI in corporate learning. We're coming over AI as a content, as a topic of learning, and we see that. All over our company, there is a certain level needed of technology understanding. And we did it last year with the digitalization, where we put a company-wide program for all top management, the customer-facing functions, everybody with e-learning. Okay, so, hey guys, we need a basic understanding of what technology is doing and why is cloud computing so important for our future business? Why is cloud computing attacking our business? What do we have to do? How do we have a different new customer interactions showing up with social media and. I think the same will apply if we go to Internet of Things. I think that is very important for us as an engineering company. That all of our people in certain levels need a really an in-depth understanding of what is our technology, what's the foundation of our technology. This will also, I think, will change the mindset and the culture of the whole company. If everybody gets a better understanding, what is AI really playing a role in industrial, in Internet of Things. Yeah? And I think, and then of course we see the typical distribution of people, which are really, some are going forward running, that yes, it's a cool thing. Other ones are a little bit undecisive. And there, of course, is a pause for people that I don't need it, I hate it, it doesn't matter for me for any reason. Yeah? And then I think the leadership plays a whole role, because if the leaders don't believe in technology, which will feed our business of the future, then of course we have a problem.
Right. I mean, Tiro, at Infosys, this larger picture, right, which is not just the nitty-gritty of technology know-how, but the larger picture of creating a digital mindset. Is that something that you do beyond, obviously, your own employees, because you're a technology company, but do you play a role in this also as a university and reaching beyond that?
I think from both the aspects, right, Roland, from leadership as well as in terms of looking at technology, a few things at Infosys, what we are trying to do is, recently we have come up with something where we are saying, how do we become live as an enterprise? So we are calling this as live enterprise, which is more about being sentient as a company. So one of the things our chairman and the CEO as well as CEO are driving is, how do you first make all the leadership oriented towards understanding the power of technology? So we have something called digital literacy program, where we call it as learning the new ABCD, which is all about all the new technologies of AI, automation, analytics, big data, blockchain, cloud and cybersecurity, and design thinking, and then digital, right? So, and finally, E is nothing but edge computing. So what we have done is we have made sure that everyone basically understands what exactly are these technologies in different industry verticals, how these technologies are becoming pervasive in creating and impacting the business outcomes of that particular industry. So that's something that we have done. But beyond that, what we are doing within Infosys is, as I said, as the concept of live enterprise, we have started to work on creating something called digital brain for the company. So the main thing that a human brain does for the humans is it makes us to become sentient, which is where we can sense, feel, and respond. So as a company, if you really want to be relevant for the future, not just employees, even the company has to be learning. And that's what we call it as live enterprise. So what we have done, in fact, is we have started to look into all the different systems, processes, experiences for employees as well as our end customers. And then we started to kind of connect all these disparate systems. You asked the question around unstructured data, what is happening. This is one element of multiple types of structured data, unstructured data coming in. And we have created this digital brain, which starts kind of guiding us to see if someone, let us say, is learning well based on the learning parameters that the learning organization is talking, L&D is talking. But when it goes into finally applying that learning in the practical applications, is that really manifesting into the right outcomes? And if that is happening, is it kind of reflected in the talent attrition, talent satisfaction and things like that? And then there is the growth. So we started to kind of create as a digital live enterprise, something called digital brain. And to kind of make sure that we do that well, all the leadership is actually kind of getting oriented, getting kind of enabled to become better in that. In fact, Nandan basically has asked us to drive a program called Full Stack Sales Leader and Full Stack Delivery Leader, which means a salesperson should also know digital skills, sales skills, then obviously the industry and market and competitor skills, and then how do you kind of look at all of this to kind of then drive the company, right? So we are doing some of those. I don't know if Roland, it answers your question, but as a company, while we are trying to do our own digital growth, we are trying to become being a old school or a legacy enterprise, not as big a legacy like some of our clients. We are still 40 years into existence, and most of the systems and processes are built when the current power of technology is not there. So you cannot just be living with those processes anymore. And that's where we are trying to create this digital brain, which is helping us to understand which processes have to be eliminated, which processes have to be busted, and then how do you kind of improve the experiences with the app kind of a model using digital platforms. So that's something we are trying to do.
Yeah. I like the concept of the sentient organization. It's kind of the interesting, way to frame that. Well, we are about a good 3/4 of an hour into our conversation. Let's see. First of all, there are a few questions that came up in chats and Q&A, as this technology here, Zoom, allows us to do all these kind of things. We may want to address them. Every question is if anybody from the ECLF group would like to jump into a kind of a open chair here, if they would just raise their hand or type a message into the chat, we can invite them to join the group also on video. So just inviting them here.
But I have a question. I got here several questions in a private chat. How do we deal with this one?
You have a private chat?
Obviously, I think it's all. I think Zoom. We have an FNA and I have a chat, and I sort of at least.
There's always the issue with these kind of online events. There are many, many more questions that we can answer.
Yeah.
And what we usually do is we collect them and try to respond to them also possibly after the event if necessary, because otherwise you would just answer question after question after question, and you go into a Q&A rather into a conversation among ourselves.
Then the answer is offline, that the people just know that we will be able to take care of it.
Yes, and actually we can announce that questions will be addressed as much as we can, of course. But again, is there anybody I could also just invite, for instance, who is talking here? There is Andreas Müller, for instance, is not anymore with us, but he's still very much interested in the area of learning. Let me see here. Hold this. Just have to minimize the chat here. We have again ArcelorMittal still here. As the group Beyond Christian and so on and so forth. Anybody who just type into your chat? No? Because we don't force them if they don't want to, or I could also invite. Let's see. I guess it's maybe also a bit of an intimidating subject. So let me instead quickly ask a few questions that came out of the chat and throw them into the this here, into the round here. So for instance, there was quite an interesting thing as it came from Andreas. Let me just see here. For AI in corporate learning, shouldn't we train AI to improve the learning process of each individual learner? Right, like which way of learning would suit instead of which content would do. So we have kind of, when we talk about learnership as a capability, to make yourself accountable for learning, right? Which is a very important element in a kind of a personally driven, personalized learning kind of thing. Are there AI ways? I think this is, you understand it well, Andreas, if you said it that way. Any thoughts on that? Can AI train to improve the learning process in individual learners?
I think part of the problem is I'm not sure we have good classifications yet for what people's preferred way or ideal way of learning would be. I mean, you hear people talking about, oh, I'm a visual learner or I'm an auditory learner, but that's a pretty, I don't know, rough classification. And my guess is in order to do that well, you know, in really all of these areas, we need clear attributes. We need attributes of the content. We need attributes of the learner. And we're not very far along in creating clear attributes about learning styles. It's my opinion anyway. I don't know if anybody else has a different one.
So what we think basically, Tom and Roland, is one, I think as the right question was rightly asked, most of the AI is basically used in adaptive learning, which is more about adapting the content to the learner. But about 6 to 8 months back, we have come up with a concept called experience configurator. We call this as experience configurator. One of our subsidiary companies called Brilliant Basics, they have come up with this nice, interesting topic where they say that along with adaptive content being powered by AI, how do we basically create an experience for the end learner where depending on what they like, they can configure the same platform in terms of what they want to see. It's not just about learning versus reading versus watching a video, but even certain aspects of I want to have some additional notes to come in when I'm learning something, or I should be able to kind of have a synchronous or asynchronous chat with someone who is experienced. So we have created something called experience configurator, and it's not just for learning, it can be for any digital app. And we have been rolling it out internally to see what actually will our employees feel. And interestingly, we are getting quite a good feedback. For example, there are some learners who may be detailed-oriented learners. So what happens is they can actually configure their experience on the platform where they see the same topic explained with 2 examples, 3 examples, which is where the adaptive content come in. But the same, another learner, even though that adaptive learning comes in, can actually say that, no, I don't want it this way, but I want to only see some kind of high-level snippets of it and things like that. So along with the concept of adaptive learning, we are also trying to bring in the concept of experience configurator, which actually can look into the previous data as well as your own interests and then change the kind of experience on the platform differently for different users.
Peter, do you think that people know what their correct type of experience is, or I don't know. I guess eventually you'd have to look at the outcomes to see if there's.
That's a very good question.
And exactly, and that is where the adaptive assessment comes in finally, which is where instead of just giving things, we try to really bring the Bloom's taxonomy, saying, I think Roland also asked initially, saying, are you really able to answer questions based on your ability to remember and things like that, or are you able to kind of contextualize and apply it or analyze and understand it, right? So we are now trying to basically bring in all these things, adaptive content, which kind of changes the form and flow, experience configurator to kind of look at giving the flexibility to the end learner, and then adaptive assessment to validate, saying that if the person is selecting something as a preference, but at the end of it, if they are not necessarily able to learn well, then actually a feedback loop kind of goes in and says, maybe you want to look into other things. And it's all about end of day, finally the choice that individual user wants to make, right?
Yeah. And from our point of view, I think we have more a hybrid model. I think we trust in the intelligence of our learner, and that the learner knows best what he wants. And what we try to get several levels of guidance. So we have a normal search, then we have a recommendation from the system. We are based on your own, you type in your interest, you get a stream of learning in different formats. It could be classroom, it could be an e-learning, it could be a video, it could be a reading, whatever. And then we have knowledge boards where we bring people together, groups which define, hey, that's cool. We have playlists like Spotify, and I can follow people. Hey, this is a cool guy. Roland Deiser has a cool playlist. I follow the playlist, like in Spotify. Then we have channels, which is also the main success factor of our learning platform. Channels are landing pages where everybody, all over the company, can easily curate for a certain topic. It could be content owners, could be countries, could be jobs, could be whatever. Yeah? And this is channels. And it's another way of people to easily access a certain area like digitalization, like communication, like e-learning in China. And then we have a very interesting concept, the concept graph. It's my favorite feature of the platform, where the system itself classifies the contents, and you type in artificial intelligence, and you get all related content objects. And it supports people to explore more and come out of the filter bubble. Yeah, and it dedicates, oh, it's not artificial intelligence. Where are the concept of Siemens? Yeah, where's IoT? Where's Python? And then you hit on this bubble, but you got immediately all the resources related to the concept, and you can share all the stuff with people. And that is what I think is this hybrid model in combining artificial intelligence capability, but also with enabling the learner to find his own path to different access points to the platform.
And you hope that they have enough intellectual curiosity to do it.
That's exactly what I wanted to say, that you need instill curiosity as a kind of a cultural trait. I just really would like to do this feature of bringing in people. So I just saw that Ruggiero is online, right? And I know that Ruggiero, you have done a few things. Ruggiero, I'm just promoting you, if you like it or not. I'm promoting you to panelists. And, you know, now you are, let me see, are you Ruggiero? You're a panelist. And who is Ruggiero? Ruggiero runs learning and development for the Fiat Chrysler Group for Europe, and has also done quite a few things in that space. Ruggiero, don't you want to do a few things? I can actually, can you turn on the camera? We can see you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We cannot see you. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, we are. Now you should be able to see me as well. I had some issue with
You're black.
Yeah, I had some issue in. Let's see.
Here we go.
Okay, I can hear you now. You can see me now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. Yeah, I have a question that is related to what we are trying to do, we have not done. That is mainly related to our manufacturing process, where we are full of different information and data that are related to quality checks along the line. We have data related to operational behaviors, like for example, by using, let's say, an intelligent device, I can detect the way the operator is using that device. We have data related to the kind of certification people have. We organize in teams, in manufacturing teams, we call there are teams of 6 to 8 people with a team leader. All of them are blue collars. So we detect all the data from the line, which are related to mainly to quality issues, the way the issues have been managed. And in addition to them, the kind of certification the team members have, because they can have different certification depending on the kind of, let's say, machine they can be on. So what we are trying to do is to use all those data to send first to the team leader, and probably in the future also directly to the operator, exactly the kind of bite-sized learning he or she needs, depending on previous behaviors and also expected future behaviors. This is what we are trying to do. So the question is, do you have any similar experience, not necessarily into the plant, where you can directly connect bite-sized learning, or just say kind of videos, 1-minute videos. We call them digital lessons, as we have in the plant currently, not digital, but 1-minute lesson, usually that the supervisor gives to the team. Do you have any kind of similar experience about that?
Do you have any kind of similar experience to that? Is it clear? If it's not clear what Ruggiero meant, ask
Yeah,
me.
I can try to better explain it.
Is it rephrase? Okay.
Should I rephrase it?
Yeah, say it again. Maybe in very quick.
Yeah, let's try to rephrase it. in our plant, we have, our plants are based on teams of 6 blue collars. Let's talk about the assembly line. So they make their own operations. And by doing that, they use their intelligent or smart devices that detect their operational behaviors. In addition, we have data related to the kind of skills they have. So which kind of performance we could expect from them. Because obviously, depending on the different shifts, we have different combination of people. And what now we're trying to do, we use those kind of data to make a decision about, let's say, how to manage issues along the line or quality issues and so on. But what now we're trying to do is to, by using the data, to send to the team exactly the right piece of content the team needs in order to, let's say, manage that specific kind of situation.
Just in time. Just in time.
Just in time, because they cannot, this is why I talk about bite-sized learning, because they have to continue their job. So they need to learn how to do that just in time. So we're talking about 1 minute kind of videos, for example, or instruction. And in addition, also, we are trying to make expectation about future potential risks or wrong behaviors by giving them the right piece of learning before those behaviors could happen. So I was wondering if you have any kind of experience of case or situation that could be beneficial for us.
Yes, we do have one. It's an experiment. I think we have 1 or 2 factories already, and this one, the specialty thing that is a robot. It's where this can be moved, and it moves automatically through the factory, and the people can call this robot, and this robot knows who the person is. You can identify using face recognition, and then you also know where the person is currently working with machinery, and then you can ask this robot, so what is about the procedures, and if you don't know how to fill, then you get automatic a new procedure. If there is a new failure arise or a new procedure, then you can also ask your question. Then it's a backend process where is some subject matter experts are there, and this is the shift leader or the factory leader. Then they try to prepare the appropriate solution. Of course, it to be clarified with several stages with EHS and stuff like this one, and then they feed it again into the system. And this is but just an experiment. And we have 2 factories, and it works quite nicely. As always, you have a lot of problems if you introduce such a system in a corporate environment. If you do an experiment with 1 factory very slow, it's not really a big problem. But if you're on the corporate stage, it is. But this system works nicely, and there's an AI in face recognition, AI, of course, in understanding what is the current job of this person, and then providing the right video or even written statement, how to deal with the situation and how to deal with the problem that may be arise. That's what we have, but it's experiment only.
Thiru, I mean, is manufacturing?
I think what we are doing is obviously we don't really have great examples, but we have put in some ideas, just like Kai talked about as experiment. If as you said, the blue-collar workers or the factory workers are basically allowed to take a phone with them, and or if there's an iPad or something like that is there in the factory space, you can actually have a little bit of a notification kind of a process when the real-time data that you talked about is actually sensing something. Immediately you can have a notification triggered either to a central system that is on the factory floor, or if they're allowed to take their mobiles, a notification going there. And from that, if you already have a curated content that you initially prepared in the bite-sized learning modules, you can actually immediately say, the temperature of this space is so and so, because of which we see some data kind of giving this kind of indicators, and based on that, why don't you quickly look into that? So the job weights, whatever job weights that you have for a particular set of activities that the factory workers are supposed to be doing, and if you have a real-time data, as you said, giving you a sense of something, let us say, going wrong or need to be intervened, then you can quickly send a nudge frame using nudge framework concept. You can send a notification to somewhere, as I said, either a mobile or a central machine that is there, with an alarm, which basically guides them to kind of quickly look at the job aids that you created. So it becomes a bite-sized learning with the power of intelligent, advanced learning that comes, and they can leverage it. So we have created this as a concept where, as a concept of anytime, anywhere learning, whether you have network or not, but if you can feed it into your existing systems of data, then definitely you can do it. That's what we are trying to do. But it's not fully implemented. Obviously, I feel the key is, recently I was reading the book of Matthew Syed on bounds, where he talked about how, depending on activities, how someone does it, if you have some sense of data telling you, you can actually guide them with the right job aids. And then if the job aids are not working out completely, maybe you can provide them a quick link to someone who's an expert, whether it is in the same factory space or some other factory space, and taking guidance directly from a live person, right? So we are trying to experiment on using combination of AI as well as augmented reality along with notifications, and then see what we can do. But again, it's not still fully implemented as a great practice yet.
Hmm.
Yeah, thank you. What is really important for us is this concept of real time. As the team leader for us is becoming more and more a real-time decision maker. He or she has to take real-time decisions. These are micro decisions, but in principle, he or she could also decide to stop the line, for example. That is mainly in principle, but so we need to give him over the right kind of bite-sized learning to support his over decision. That is the main point. So in addition, obviously, then he can ask, he has his smartwatch usually, or smartwatch, so he can ask for support to the maintenance people or to supervisor, to other people. But that takes time. So what we are trying to cover is this kind of real-time decision supported by learning that are based on prediction of the kind of decision he or she could take based on the historical data. That is our point.
Yeah. I mean, what I find very interesting, and it goes back to that, there is a kind of an interplay between what technology always is, by the way, of course, but technology, in this case, artificial intelligence, does to one functional thing, in this case, learning, and somehow a change then in organizational processes and leadership. It has reverberations that are usually not really seen that easily if you just look at it, you know, under a contained kind of perspective. So for instance, you might have to change the way you lead in a, you know, kind of a team context in your manufacturing plant, Ruggiero, because of now new ways people can learn just in time. Or am I wrong here? And that again has consequences for leadership skills. It's kind of a reverberation we cannot really control and understand quite. Right? So the organizational architecture is changing. We haven't really looked at that much. Tom, I mean, your work on the impact on technology on organizations, does it look how, you know, the whole texture of organizations, the processes, the culture are changing because of AI?
Not much yet. I think lots of potential for that to happen, but I think we're in the very early days of it.
Right. Right.
And, you know, a lot of experimentation and a lot of pilots and proofs of concept and so on, but not enough production deployments maybe to think about broad scale organizational implications. And, you know, the people who think about organizational change are not schooled in AI and vice versa. So
right. Yeah. Okay, so maybe there is one last thing that I'd like to throw in, which was a question that came from the United Arab Emirates, from Grace, who runs their program. I just read this. We're a federal entity that runs large-scale skilling programs in the Emirates for job seekers. And the ministry places them in jobs after we repair them with competencies for the job. And they want to track all those new hires in their journey to new organizations and then make new training. And the question is, do organizations look into how to invest in those new hires with AI-powered tools, which is somehow something which is obviously beyond the boundary of your organization. New hires, I hope I framed that right. Or is it hard to understand the question?
No, I think based on what I could see is once someone becomes a part of your organization, whether they're new hire or experienced hire, you need to democratize your access to information, access to a platform and tools to pretty much everyone. So at least in Infosys, we don't differentiate people in terms of whether you are a new hire or an experienced person. But once they come into the ecosystem, they complete their learning, they start performing on the job, they pretty much have access to all the information, provided obviously sensitive information or sensitive tools and other things are there. But I don't think we really look at differentiating people by their experience or role to provide them access to the AI tools or any other accelerators or tools for that matter, to be frank.
Hmm. And maybe a very last one. This comes actually from Peter. I think quite a few know maybe Peter Kavanaugh. He used to run Crottonville as the chief operating officer and for some time was chief learning officer, also interim for GE. He's got a lot of questions, but one is, does AI in learning provide a good model for AI in other parts of the business? Which I think is an interesting question. Is learning something which is on the forefront of AI deployment, or is it a laggard, or is it something we can learn from the way learning uses AI? I mean, Kai, you've been doing a lot. Do you see that other functions, can benefit from that? How do you see that?
I think in my mind, it's generally a bit of a laggard, but it doesn't mean it couldn't start to change the way the rest of the organization thinks. I mean, to me, the paradigms can be quite similar, where we say we're personalizing advertising, we're personalizing next best actions for customers or for salespeople. And I think personalizing learning is something that clearly is going to have to involve AI. So, it's like personalized medicine. It's complex, it's difficult to do, but we know that's the direction that the world is going to go in. And I think it's going to be true for learning as well.
Hmm.
I think in some aspects, maybe, but I think we have to be a little bit humble here as well. If I see what happens in our industries, how they deal with AI and big data in service environment, for instance, I think they are really, really good. And I would even compare our knowledge with their knowledge. I think there are some functions where we can support. But, I'm always surprised when I talk a lot with people all around the company, different functions, procurement people, sales people, and there are many, 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 many pockets of excellence where people have really excellent knowledge in their area of function or an area of business or area or whatever they are. So I think what really makes sense is to connect to each other, to build up those ecosystems and learn from each other. But I wouldn't say that now learning, at least in our case here, is the lighthouse project for all of the Siemens in how to use AI. I think, yes, we do it. I think we are happy that we are at least on eye level with other people. Like, hey, oops, that are you doing here as well? I didn't expect it from you. But I especially from my view, I think we don't are the technology lead in AI for Siemens. I think that is there are other people which really are doing great stuff and which much more, let me say, impact and much more data and much more money as well. And because it's bringing customer value. I know how it in other cases.
But having said this, who else would take care of a kind of a overall overarching, let's say, dialogue architecture, right? That makes these things proliferate. That's actually in an advanced learning function, that could be the learning function doing this, right?
Yes, we do. And that's exactly when we now talk about how to deal with the hot skills. And AI is one of the hot skills. What we now, again, that's our function that we can do very well. I think bring people together from all over the world, over Siemens, and bring the people together in labs and hackathons and bring Siemens as a whole forward. But it's not in dealing with technology AI, it's that we're dealing with the people who deal with AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That is, of course, that's our role.
Or just creating, for instance, I don't know, a platform to understand the opportunities and threats and barriers and whatever of AI beyond your learning function, right? Just everywhere. That like Ruggiero did it in production right now. Okay, maybe let's do a last round. We're only coming to the end of the hour, actually hour and 15. Thiru, maybe let's starting with you real quick. Any insights you take from this conversation with you?
I think I genuinely believe that the learning and development function within every organization is coming to the center stage now. Whatever discussions I have been having with many of our clients, including the universities and others, it is very clear that the L&D function has to play a huge role in turning around the opportunities as well as outcomes for the business. So in that sense, however well you can adapt and adopt the new technologies and the power of this new AI, ML, NLP and AI, AR and VR as well, and then augment your current capabilities that you have to transform your talent, I think that's the way to go. And in some sense, if I have to really look at a lot of discussions, in fact, Roland, when we talked first time, we talked about how do we look into moving away the learning effectiveness being only from the perspective of understanding how the learning is done. And then if we are able to meaningfully use the power of data and AI to correlate and translate the learning to the business outcomes, because the data is now pervasive across all the systems. If you intelligently kind of link them, I think that will be the great thing that we will do as a L&D organization for the companies.
Okay, last words.
Yes, famous last words. And one thing, if you start all with AI, you need really to have purpose. Why are you doing all this stuff? It's very important for me that you know what is your role, what is your future role, and why do you need AI to fulfill this role? And the second one is don't overpromise stuff. We implemented a chatbot, for instance, and we did it very carefully, also with the learning world. Yeah? If you overpromise things, the AI is now the solution for everything. You will fail. So be very realistic what the system can do, and only promise what the system really is able to deliver. Otherwise, you will really have a problem. And but also keep in mind, play with experiments. Do a lot of innovators and seek your friends all over the company. Look for friends, look for networks, look for building up an ecosystem, and then try it step by step, but always driven by a purpose, by a vision, by some kind of a North Star to very exactly know this is where I want to go, this is my mission in the company, and I need different people, different and technologies, and then bring everything together and always trust in people.
And choose your friends also outside the company, like for instance, Tom, right? Yeah. Tom could be a friend. Tom, how did you?
He was a friend, of
How did you?
A friend, Kai. I think I would certainly agree with everything that Thiru and Kai said. They are very knowledgeable practitioners in this space. And just a couple of other things. I think it is probably too early for kind of large-scale production deployments of AI in learning and development, but you can have a lot of experiments, and so do that. And then also, I think Kai mentioned earlier, the data is the hard part with AI, and the time-consuming part. So start now, classifying attributes of your programs, classifying attributes of your learners, try to determine the outcomes that arise, because machine learning is very dependent on labeled outcomes, so that when you're really ready to do something on a production basis, you'll have the data that you need to analyze.
And Ruggiero, you're sitting here, still muted. Maybe as a participant, you know, how do you like the format and how do you see the whole thing here that we did over the last hour?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is very interesting as a format and very effective also to get, I think, important insights in this case and how this AI can be applied into the learning and development. My personal feeling is that, yes, we are doing some kind of proof of concepts and pilot tests, as I was saying before, mainly in the manufacturing area. But okay, it is not a major technology for learning and development, so probably we still need to wait for future development. But again, I think that this format is really very effective. And,
it's probably it's also diverse from industry to industry, and automotive is different than IT, and it's different than engineering, and you know, kind of stuff like that. Okay, let's leave it at that. I would like to use the opportunity to first of all, of course, thank you guys for taking the time and sharing your wisdom and being open, and also sharing questions and uncertainties. And there are a lot still, of course, related to that subject. Also, thank you to everybody who joined in. We are still with about 50 people who are active in that after an hour and a half, which is pretty impressive. And as I said, this will be a recording also, which will be available then to everybody who has registered. And I think it's just a start of a conversation, and probably a year or two from now, we will have a maybe different one or have learned more. But as we move on, I think it's a learning process for the whole learning community and learning industry as well, as it is for those who we're supposed to make learners. So we are all learning, I guess. Okay, so a big thank you once again, and then I'll just think we can wrap this up. And, you know, I might get back to you with answers to those questions that came through the chats and everything. Yeah, and I wish everybody a good evening, a good morning, a good afternoon, and whatever in time zones we are. Okay, guys, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.